So how do you respond when your ex tells you they have a significant other? They're dating somebody, they're in a serious relationship after you and they have broken up. I was in that situation and I'm sorry that you're in that situation. That's why you're watching this video. But we're going to get into all of it. We're going to cover the do's and the don'ts of how you want to respond to that. We're going to look at what their motivations are. What's really going on behind their desire to tell you that? We're going to talk about how you need to feel about it. What should you do with those feelings that brings up in you? We're also going to talk about kids, in case you have kids, and how a new relationship with a significant other impacts your children. And we're going to get into all of that. And then at the very end of the video, I'm going to give you a few things to be on the lookout for and a few things to do, just on the off chance that you still don't really want to let them go and you would love to attract them back on the off chance that this new relationship ends. And I'm going to tell you what to do if I was in that situation. Hi, I'm Jeff Campbell from DivorcedParentsClub.com, and I'm on a mission to help other divorced parents, separated parents, newly split up, going through the separation process parents, deal with all of the things that we have to deal with, whether that's custody, whether that's divorce paperwork, whether that's dating after your divorce, toxic exes. We cover it all on this channel and in future videos. And if you have an idea for a future video you'd like to see, leave me that in a comment down below as well. So the first thing I want to ask you is, how do you feel about hearing this news? I don't know if you heard about it directly from them, through the grapevine. In my case, my now ex-wife did start seeing somebody really before the divorce was done, but we were already separated, so it didn't really faze me in that regard. She didn't tell me. I just sort of figured it out based on the changes in her behavior. And, it did bring up a lot of uncomfortable feelings for me. It brought up anger and resentment and jealousy. And in this case, she's dating a guy that she's known for years, who was basically a family friend. This guy has played with my children. He's been in my house many times. And so that added a layer of complexity to it compared to if she just met somebody new. But how do you feel about hearing this news? How does it make you feel? What are you doing with those feelings? I don't want you to bury your feelings. That's a surefire way to just kind of let it slowly build up and then explode. And then you're going to do something that you're going to later regret. So don't let those feelings just get buried. By that, I don't mean lash out at your ex. Don't dump that on them. Have a healthy outlet to express your feelings. That could be with your buddies drinking a beer. That could be with a therapist. Could be with family members. But don't unload on your ex who's telling you this information, or don't unload on them even if they're not the one telling you this information. Don't do that. Don't seem needy, desperate, angry, unstable, especially if you are a guy. You don't want to come across that way to a woman, even if it's your ex-wife in this case. You don't want to come across that way because those are unattractive qualities. And the more you cultivate and practice unattractive qualities, the more likely you are to continue to behave that way. And even if you never get back together again with your ex, it's not attractive behavior for attracting someone new. So have a healthy outlet for expressing your feelings, but do get them out. Next, I want you to realize that this new person is not your replacement. They are not you. They are not replacing you. They cannot replace you. I know in my case, my ex is dating a guy who is very different from me. Very different visually, personality-wise, you name it. He is not me at all. So I don't see him as my replacement. Certainly not my replacement in the beer department, because he has terrible taste in beer. And I've said that to his face before. But he's not me. And I don't see him as a threat. I don't see him replacing me in the annals of history. That's just not what it is. And I don't care who the person is. They don't get to erase all of the things that happened with you and your ex prior to them coming into the picture. My wife and I were married for 15 years, legally married for over 15 years, separated shortly before the 15-year anniversary. We did a lot of fantastic things together, and we raised 3 amazing kids together. And the new guy doesn't factor into that. His presence now has no impact or bearing on any of the things that happened in those past 15 years. And yes, obviously, there were some bad things that happened too, which is ultimately what led to her wanting out. But there were far more great things that happened than there were bad things, and he doesn't get to erase that. Next, and this is going to be a tough one, I want you to be happy for them. And I know, depending upon how fresh this is, whether or not you heard about it from them, and how amicable your breakup was, how long ago your breakup was, all of those things will factor into how difficult or easy it is for you to feel good about them and to be happy for them. But ultimately, I want you to be happy for them. Why do I say that? Well, for one, anytime we hold on to anger and resentment and negativity, that ultimately is hurting us more than it's hurting anyone else. I don't want you to hold on to those kinds of feelings. Plus, think about it this standpoint. Nothing you say or do is likely going to cause her to or him to change their mind and not be in this new relationship. In fact, the more inappropriate your behavior is, the more you're going to push them to the new person. So again, if you have any hope of attracting them back, and maybe you don't, that's not on the table in my case, but if you do, you don't want to engage in any behavior that could be seen as unattractive. I'm going to get into that a little bit later in the video. Next, I want you to think about, why are they telling you? After all, some people might have a great relationship with their ex and they're just telling you because they want you to know and they want you to be happy for them and they want to keep the lines of communication open. Other people might be doing it for more nefarious purposes. They may be wanting you to be jealous, or they may want to just throw it in your face and manipulate you and cause you to feel pain. They may want to lash out at you. So I want you to think about what their motivation is. That doesn't change your course of action. I still want you to be happy for them, even if you're not on the inside. I still want you to act as if what they're telling you doesn't faze you in a negative way. I want you to retain your composure, because losing your composure, losing your shit, doesn't do anything to help you, no matter what your situation is and no matter what your goal is. But they may be trying to elicit jealousy, or they may just be wanting you to be happy for them. So think about the motivations behind why they're telling you this. Now, if you don't have kids together, there's no real reason for them to be having this conversation with you at all. In fact, if my ex and I didn't have kids together, I'd probably, I don't know if I'd delete her phone number, but I'd probably stop following her on social media and stop communicating with her, because there's just not a need to. But we have 3 kids together. We're going to be tied together for the rest of our lives. So it's important that we maintain a certain level of a relationship that's harmonious and not full of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, for example. So if you do have kids together, when is it okay for your ex, or you, if you're seeing somebody, when is it okay to introduce the kids to the new person? Well, in our case, we actually built it into the divorce decree that we had to wait 6 months before we introduced a romantic partner to our children. In other words, we had to date them for 6 months before it was okay. And even then we put it in that they had to meet the other one first, just so we can kind of get a feel for who they are. Who is this person that's going to be spending time with our kids? Now, in my ex's case, like I said, this guy is a family friend, so he's known to all of us anyway, which kind of makes it easier in some ways and complicates it in other ways. But we actually ended up reaching a verbal agreement that it was okay to introduce people after 3 months. I felt that was fair, especially in his case, since we all knew him anyway. And, it just makes things simpler. Now, in our case, our 2 older kids were giving some pushback to her about the situation, especially our oldest. But, that doesn't change the fact that, in theory, my ex is going to be with this guy for quite a while, maybe years to come. Don't know, not my control, but they could potentially be together for years. So it's silly to delay the inevitable. And eventually our kids are going to have to kind of work through the feelings that they're feeling about it, the resentment about the divorce and the separation and all of that kind of thing. They are feeling those things, and I do want them to feel those things. They're entitled to feel those things. But that doesn't change the fact that my ex is in a relationship and is part of her life, and they need to accept that. Now, some of you out there, I know, are really secretly hoping that your ex will come back to you after this new relationship ends. So what's the likelihood of that happening? Well, just know that 50% of the time they do actually come back. And that's even more true if this new relationship that they're in was started really quickly after they're split with you. In other words, it's a rebound relationship. Rebound relationships have upwards of a 77% failure rate. That means there's a really good chance that this new relationship is going to end, and probably only end, typically somewhere between, I'd say, 3 and 6 months is what that lasts. And then there's a 50% chance once that ends that they're going to come back to you. That's really good news for you if, in fact, you do want to reconcile with them. But if you do want that, you've got to do some key things to make sure that you get in that 50% window where they want to come back to you, because there's some definite things you could be doing that would be pushing them away, either back into the arms of the other person or to somebody new entirely. You don't want to do that. You don't want to push them away. You do want to draw them back in, but not in a manipulative way. So let's look at some of that in just a minute, though. So I want you to act like this information doesn't bother you. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I want you to act calm, cool, and collected, even if that's not really how you feel. You might be angry, you might be upset, you might be sad, you might be hurt, you might be lonely. Totally okay to feel all those things. Not okay to show it to them. That gives them power and makes you look weak, and you don't want that, especially if you want to attract them back. So I want you, whether you're a man or a woman, I want you to be like James Bond. What is James Bond like? He's keeping it light, he's keeping it fun, he's always got a snappy comeback, and he knows that if this woman goes away, there's another one right around the corner. And that's the attitude I want you to have. Again, you can be feeling all kinds of things inside. This is what I want you to present. And whether or not you ever attract your ex back or not, this is also going to work in your favor to attract other people to you. I want you to be centered. This is especially true for guys. You've got to be centered. You've got to be masculine. You've got to keep it light. You don't want to be losing your shit all the time or just seem like you're an emotional wreck. You've got to be calm, cool, and collected, just like James Bond, to attract anyone into your life. So what are some of the other things that I want you to do and not do, both in regards to this situation, but also if you want to attract them back? And like I said, you may not want to attract them back, but these things will also work to attract other people to you as well. So we've already talked about James Bond, but I want you to not be nasty or rude. I mentioned that at the very beginning of the video, but even if you are angry about it or upset about it, don't show that to them. You congratulate them. You tell them you're happy for them. If you don't feel like saying anything more than that, you don't have to. But at the bare minimum, I want you to do that. And then it's okay to set boundaries. My ex and I have a fairly good relationship. For exes, fairly good communication. I think I'm a little bit more honest and forthright with her than she is with me, but generally speaking, it's pretty good. But if you don't have that or don't want that, it's okay to set boundaries. In other words, my ex has told me things about this new relationship that she's in, things that he likes to do. And, I've told her things about some of the women that I'm dating and things like that. But you may not want that level of closeness with your ex, and that's totally okay. So it's okay to set clear boundaries. And you can set boundaries without being angry or being upset. You just say, hey, you know what? I'm happy for you guys. I love that, your life is turning around. I don't really need to hear a lot of details about your relationship, though. And just leave it at that. Doesn't need to be angry, doesn't need to be terse, doesn't need to create tension or aggravation. It just needs to be clear. And then you just need to make sure that you are enforcing that, because they may try and give you information after you've said that you don't want to hear. You say, hey, you know what, this is kind of one of those things where I said I didn't really want to hear this kind of information. And again, don't lose your shit. Just hold firm to that boundary, because there's nothing worse, nothing makes you look weaker than setting a boundary and continuously allowing people to walk all over it. Real quick, before we get into the meaty tips about how to attract them back or how to attract somebody else if you don't want them back, hit that subscribe button, the bell notification button, and that like button too. That way you get notified of future videos that I put out just like this one, but you're also helping me grow this channel and reach more people and help more people too. So what are the things that you can do? We've already talked about several things, but what are some of the things that you can do if you want to attract them back? And remember that this will also work very well to attract other people if you don't want them back or if they don't want to come back. So what are the things that you can do? First is focus on being the very best version of you that you can be. What do I mean by that? Well, over time in long-term relationships like the one that I just got out of, we tend to get complacent about things. It could be our health, could be our weight, could be our friendships, could be our hobbies. All the things that I used to do back when I first met my now ex-wife, all the things that made me me, that made her fall in love with me, many of those things had fallen by the wayside over the last 15 years. And that has a way of reducing how attractive we are to them. So I know it sounds weird to say to attract them back or to attract somebody else back, focus on yourself, but it's totally true. So if you've been not going to the gym, but you used to go, then get back into that. If you used to do yoga, but you've been slacking on that, get back into that. If you find yourself very anxious and stressed, start taking up something like meditation. Find things that resonate with you and get back to doing the things that bring you joy. Things that bring you joy just naturally uplift your entire life, and they have an impact on all aspects of your life. So get back to doing the things that bring you joy, and you'll find yourself mentally and physically and emotionally in much better shape than you were before. And that's, like I said, that's just makes you that much more attractive, either to your ex or to somebody else. Then, of course, in addition to finding those things that bring you joy, think about your friendships. And I did mention this very briefly earlier, but many of us have friendships outside of our relationship. And oftentimes over the years, those friendships go by the wayside. We don't see them as much as we used to. We don't talk to them as much as we used to. Maybe we just like their stuff on Instagram, and that's about the extent of our friendship. Get back to hanging out with those people. Get back to having fun. Get back to having hobbies. Maybe you go play, if you're a guy, maybe you go play pool with your buddies once a week, or maybe you go shoot guns at the gun range if you like to do that. Find things like that and do things with like-minded people that are your close friends. That will also bring you joy and help you get back to finding who you really are, because we do tend to lose some of that over the years of being in a long-term relationship. Anyway, I hope this video helps you. Again, if it did, hit that like button, subscribe, and bell notification. But for now, I'll see you in the next video.